Bitcoin again falls just short of passing 100,000 US dollars for the first time, while altcoins rally, begging the question, has alt season really started? We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. Nick, yeah, prices going off in every direction over in altcoin land this week. Quite a crazy week, hey?
Yeah, finally, I think FOMO is really gripping the market. We've talked a lot about, this situation that's going to come. And finally here, especially after we had the CryptoCon, we got a bit of a sight into what the market's feeling like. But even now, you're seeing XRP doing crazy things, seeing Enron, people trying to launch an Enron token. So things are definitely getting frothy out there in the market.
Absolutely. As you can see on the screen here, for those watching on YouTube, XRP is nearly doubled in the past 7 days, so up 95%, and it's gone up by about 5.5x in the past 30 days, bringing it now being the third largest cryptocurrency by market cap. I believe it wasn't that long ago since it was about ranked number 7 or ranked number 8 earlier this year. And it's actually now 50% larger than Solana. So it actually surpassed Solana's market cap during this week in recent days, and now it's actually 50% larger than it. So it just gives you a sense of how hard some of these altcoins are really pumping at the moment. We got the likes of Cardano as well, up 25%. Chainlink up 42%. So yeah, we'll get into whether alt season really has truly kicked off. One indicator of that, sort of by definition, is you tend to see Bitcoin dominance falling. That is what normally starts off alt season, given altcoins need to outperform in order for Bitcoin dominance to fall down. And that has been exactly what we've seen. So Bitcoin dominance fell from early 60% not that long ago, and that was at multi-year highs. And that has now come down all the way down to around 56.0%, which is Bitcoin dominance, its lowest level since August. So again, there's one sign there that alt season may have started. I'm not too convinced yet that we've truly entered alt season. I personally think Bitcoin has to go a lot higher for us to get a sustained period of alt season. Yeah, I'm not sure about your thoughts there, Nick.
I'm probably the same to you, but then again, a lot of the initial thesis I had has started to prove a bit incorrect in certain circumstances. Like I initially thought would not see some of these legacy coins perform as well as they did. So I'm still surprised to see likes of XRP and especially Cardano just continue to roar higher and really defy, I think, what a lot of people look to when they see fundamentals on these chains, which still aren't really there. And a lot of is still built on a lot of hype. So that's one thing that I'm surprised. So who knows, Matt? At the end of the day, the market is doing a lot of crazy things.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll keep following XRP, see how high it can go, maybe short term before an inevitable correction. But over in ETH land now, and we've seen quite a lot of news out in the past 7 days for ETH, even though it has still stayed relatively in the backgrounds while the likes of XRP have stolen the spotlight. Can you just recap this one here, Nick?
Yeah, as we all know, the Ethereum ETFs were really slow going and really disappointed on their debut. They didn't see the huge, wave of inflows that Bitcoin had, but this is starting to turn around with. I think they had the latest daily inflows. That was a record high of about 330 million, and these, I think, global products hit about 2.2 billion of annual inflows, for the year. So these things are starting to see quite a lot of interest now. That really wasn't the case early on in their life cycle, where I think now they actually are net positive in terms of the inflows. So that's a really positive sign that, hey, Ethereum's been really beaten down, but now we're starting to see some more of this money flow into the Ethereum ETFs, and they're importantly starting to get into the positive territory now with, net positive inflows in their life cycle. We also saw, I think Bernstein, another investment firm, they come out and really talked up the possibility of an Ethereum ETF staking yield being embedded in there. So this is huge because, as we know, a lot of people probably may not want to be getting exposure to these ETFs because they don't have the embedded yield that Ethereum has. Of course, Bitcoin doesn't have to contend with this, so it didn't have to face this issue. But Ethereum being a proof of stake network, it does give off a native yield. So this would be huge if we do see staking being added, because it just make these products more attractive rather than going and staking by yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you're staking millions of dollars as well into these ETFs, that tangible staking yield is huge when it gets compounded over a year or so. So something I'm really looking forward to there is they're really excited about potentially seeing that staking yield with a more crypto-friendly SEC.
Yeah, and onto Bitcoin in terms of the biggest news from the past week. Really, it's a same sort of MicroStrategy continuing to accumulate. That has been, as we said a couple of months ago, I think it was at the end of October when they announced their ambitious plans to really start accumulating at a much more rapid pace. We sort of didn't know what to expect, given we had already sort of seen MicroStrategy going so hard for Bitcoin. And now to hear that they were accelerating their purchases, for me was a really big indicator that we could actually go over 100,000 quite soon. But yeah, even with their recent purchases, just the other day or just overnight at the time of recording, they've actually surpassed 400,000 in total Bitcoin holdings. So the news that came out, just early this week was that they bought another 15,400 Bitcoin for around 1.5 billion. Overnight at the same sort of time frame as well. Marathon Digital, a large Bitcoin miner, confirmed that they had purchased over $600 million worth of Bitcoin with cash recently for an average price of around 95,000 US dollars. So the combined buying pressure from MicroStrategy and Marathon, which is over $2 billion worth, still failed to push Bitcoin's price over the 100,000 threshold. So it has me wondering, what is going to be able to push it over if that's not possible. So we saw when MicroStrategy announced their purchase a bit of a sell-off in Bitcoin, which is very consistent with what has happened in the past. Once MicroStrategy announces, there tends to be a sell-off. So we'll see, if there's any outside catalysts that can cause Bitcoin to rally into the six-figure sort of territory. But speaking of sort of Michael Saylor as well, he did pitch Microsoft. So we did cover Microsoft that they were going to be voting at their annual sort of general meeting. They were going to be voting on whether or not to entertain and more deeply consider allocating some of their balance sheet towards Bitcoin and investing essentially in Bitcoin. We actually saw Michael Saylor was nominated as the person to, I suppose, present the case for having a Bitcoin adoption strategy to the board of directors. So even though, as Nick and I said, it's very unlikely that this will be passed. However, to see, Michael Saylor, speaking to the board of directors for Microsoft and talking about even Bitcoin, you start to sort of pinch yourself a bit to see how far it has come. But I don't expect much to come out of this pitch. But I know Michael Saylor's achieved some, I guess, lower probability things before. So we'll see if he can pull another rabbit out of the hat. But yeah, this was certainly made a lot of the non-crypto and more mainstream tech news this week.
It was a tough one, I think, to actually see get going. These smaller companies, it probably makes more sense. Whereas Microsoft's such a big company, people always said if the argument really is that, hey, just pay it back as the dividend to shareholders, increase that dividend, and then they can buy Bitcoin if they really want to have Bitcoin. That's probably the argument. That's probably a tough one to really get, with Microsoft being one of the biggest, companies in the world, to start buying Bitcoin on behalf of their, shareholders. In a way, it's a tough one to sell.
Yeah, certainly. And if anyone is interested in seeing, okay, how does Michael Saylor actually pitch Bitcoin? I'm sure many of you have seen that over the years, but he did actually disclose and share his actual presentation slides that he presented to Microsoft. So you can search his name in account on Twitter or X, and you can find the link to those slides on his social media. So again, just a nice way to see how other people frame the case for Bitcoin, which was, again, refreshing to see for sure. Other news from the past week, we've actually had the US government moving some more Bitcoin, Nick.
Yeah, this one always gets the market concerned, where you see, the US government, who had 1% of all the Bitcoin, they moved about 1.92 billion, so 20K BTC around on their Coinbase wallets. So this, will spook a lot of people out there, and you see a lot of headlines saying that government's dumping Bitcoin. It's unclear exactly if they're going to sell or not. It's important, though, to say that the US government marshal's office, they do have a partnership with Coinbase. So basically, if they were to move it or custody their assets, they have to do it with Coinbase. So this could just be a case of they're reconfiguring some wallets or sending it to new addresses. At the end of the day, it's tough to really say whether they're going to be selling or not. But if they do, I would anticipate maybe a short-term concern in the market. But as we're seeing, with MicroStrategy and all these other big public companies just buying up Bitcoin, I would imagine that any dip like that would be eaten up pretty easily when you have the likes of MicroStrategy buying so much Bitcoin off the market. That 2 billion figure isn't actually as big as people would have once thought.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. And in terms of more just Bitcoin adoption news, again, as we've been saying, the conversation has escalated to these days more being about institutional and corporate adoption of Bitcoin. And now as we enter 2025, even sovereign state adoption of Bitcoin and potentially even, I guess leading economies considering actually, diversifying and purchasing some Bitcoin, which we've said is a long shot in the short term, but it still could happen. I guess related to that, we actually saw a Brazilian congressman propose a similar bill to what Cynthia Lummis did, and what we have been talking about in recent weeks, where again, this bill essentially is proposing that Brazil purchases a Bitcoin sovereign strategic reserve or starts to build one, which would essentially just, I guess, entail just continuing to acquire and accumulate Bitcoin. So this, from what I've seen, is very unlikely to be passed, similar to Cynthia Lummis. However, you're just getting, I guess, Bitcoin continue to be in the conversation, even the first few attempts. If it does fail, I suppose who's not to say that they could keep trying, in years to come, where they continue to sort of iterate on some pushback, and maybe eventually you get this sort of broader sort of government or even public sector or sovereign adoption of Bitcoin. Not 100% in the allocation of Bitcoin, of course, but just a very, very small amount. So this conversation, to be honest, has come a lot faster than I personally expected. So it's one we're continuing to monitor very closely, particularly the Donald Trump headline and the impact of variable of Trump joining, being inaugurated on January 20th, what sort of happens, from there onwards in terms of the US and their relationship with Bitcoin. That's going to be one of the big talking points of 2025. But in the meantime, Brazil also, I suppose, throwing their hat in the ring as well.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you see they want to allocate, I think it was 5% of 372 billion. So I guess that would be about 18 billion or so. So even if you have those really small amounts, that's why I think it's a lot of Bitcoin is pretty excited once you start to seeing like sovereign wealth and governments start to enter the space, because 2% of that is quite a lot of money. So that's I think why the bullish case for these reserve funds are so exciting. But as you said, Matt, tough one to really sell and get momentum behind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think excitement has really, gotten quite accelerated recently, with Bitcoin's just going from early 60,000s all the way up to high 90,000s US dollars. As we said, altcoins have actually started to take off in certain areas as well. And it sort of naturally, I think, has people asking the question, are we due for a correction, really? You rarely see cryptocurrency just soaring up only, with such a vigorous sort of rally that we've had recently. You would naturally expect it to sort of cool down a bit, and that discussion and topic has sort of started to enter circles a lot more in recent days. I suppose there are signs popping up, Nick, right, that you would say is consistent historically with signs that, hey, we're just probably due to go on pause for a bit here and trade sideways or even slide down a bit.
Yeah, it's because at the end of the day, you've got to remember that, hey, Bitcoin has increased from 55 of mid 50s, 60s to that almost 100K in the last month or so. Like it's an incredible move higher. So we really need to understand that, hey, the market is getting pretty euphoric at the moment, especially with a lot of the altcoin action. But nothing can be summed up better than seeing Enron, which was one of the most famous bankruptcy fraud cases in US history. I think the intellectual property was bought, in some capacity. It doesn't look like it's affiliated with the original Enron team or anything like that. But they're coming out and people have bought the IP, bought the brand, and they're now launching a crypto token based on the energy sector. So huge one here. They're back. And maybe the top is starting to be back too. I don't know about you, Matt, but discussions or uh, examples of this really gets my mind going back to 2021 tops, even 2017 tops, when I think my favorite was when you had public companies changing their names to blockchain. I think it was like the Long Island iced tea company or something back in 2020 in 2017, which had no affiliation to blockchain. It was a tea company or something, but changed it in the hype cycle. And then we saw that was a massive top signal. So obviously we're not saying that the full Bitcoin top is definitely in. Expect a lot more to happen into 2025. Really excited for next year. But you have to look at these as maybe local top signals as, we hit that 100K when you're seeing things like this hit the market.
Yeah, that's important to reiterate. I think, any signs of local top, just distinguishing local tops from all-time highs is very important. So I guess what we're saying is historically, you've seen situations within bull markets where we have 20, 30% corrections. Even, of course, in the most recent bull market in a few years ago now, we actually got a 50% correction within the bull market before proceeding and going on to all-time highs. So again, we're saying there will be local tops where it feels like we're sort of just maybe the party's over for a bit, but I think we both agree, and a lot of our members and team thinks that overall 2025 we will end up going a lot higher than where we are at the moment. But yeah, certainly signals of it being a bit overheated are starting to appear. Aave is another one that we look at, or more specifically the actual funding rates, where you can start earning yield on your US dollars at sort of a 60 to 70% annualized interest rate. Of course, that won't last. That fluctuates a lot. But when you're starting to see, getting a return on your USD for even in double figure percentages, to be honest, let alone over 60%, is quite a big signal to me that, hey, things may be getting overheated in the short term. Worth emphasizing here that you should never, at least in my opinion, base your decision making entirely on one of these variables. But believe us when we say you should absolutely be paying attention to, I guess, a critical threshold of how many of these variables all align at the one stage. Another one here I've got up is Justin Sun, of course. Just signs of just lavish, overspending, just human greed. Of course, Justin Sun is unique in the sense he's very well off seemingly, and here we have eating a $6.2 million banana that he purchased as artwork last week. Again, these all add up, and they're just things that we're paying attention to at the moment. But yeah, some local top signals are starting to really grow, I suppose, is our takeaway there.
Do you have any there, Matt, that you're probably looking at in the next couple of months when we possibly start to see Bitcoin, reach beyond the 100,000 and maybe an altcoin season happens? What other top signals really? Ones
I've been saying is NFT market has really come back with vigor recently. So you've seen like double-digit percentage growth in just the NFT floor prices for about 2 weeks now, which has not happened in a very long time. And NFT volume is going up. NFTs historically have been a very late cycle sort of phenomenon. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on. If that just gets out to mania and complete euphoria in NFTs, that's a sign that, hey, maybe we will actually be due for a correction. And even just signs like these old, more or less, I guess, like ghost chains is probably putting it too harshly, but these projects that have just stagnated in recent years, the likes of IOTA, even Neo, those older 2017, 2018 generation of cryptocurrencies, a lot of them have doubled in price or so in the last week, which again is great for those people holding it. But I just question how long that can sustain for. So that will be something I'm keeping an eye on as well, Nick. Funding rates as well are always important. So going on, there's some good dashboards there that just show you, how much is it costing either people to go long and I guess lever up and take on more risk if those funding rates are historically getting quite high, and essentially people are just earning a lot of money for just just depositing their money essentially and lending it to these people won't take a lot of risk. That's also something I think is historically quite a good signal. But yeah, as a team of Collective Shift, we're watching these very closely because that's really informative of sort of trying to, I guess, at least for me, plan my sell strategy. So that's something we're continuing to monitor. Um, you may even, that sort of does segue, I suppose, into our altcoin segment, where I suppose symbolically the ticker here is hype. Hyperliquid was the was a token that a project that tokenized last week, and it actually turned out to be the industry's largest airdrop to date in terms of just overall value, and then I think on an average recipient value. So I'm not sure. I can't remember if that is on a median basis or if it's on a mean average. However, on one of those accounts at least, we saw it being a record airdrop where at a moment we actually saw the hyperliquid airdrop get up to on average 30,000 US dollars received. And yeah, so AUD, that's probably around 45,000 AUD worth of hype tokens. There's a lot of reasons why it's ran up so hard, which we can get into. We have sort of had one eye on this project, but it's not an area that we sort of focus on at Collective Shift. That being, we don't really do much airdrop hunting, or we don't really do much perps trading. So I had sort of one eye on it, but never got involved in it. I think I did see one member who did get an airdrop, which was really good. But yeah, I think, Nick, if you said 2024, one of the big themes would definitely be overall just this negative sentiment towards airdrops and just the whole high FTV, low float sort of trend that we've seen, where a lot of retail participants just cannot get involved in terms of buying a token at a price that they view as being a fair valuation. This sort of flipped the narrative in a sense, and I think will be looked back on as a big sort of watershed moment where you may actually see the high FDV, low float sort of meta or narrative sort of come to an end. What are your thoughts there?
I think you're pretty spot on, especially considering that I think this was, was it like a 30% edge? Like, how big was the airdrop really? Like, that was probably one of the largest percentage points in the industry. And it really can attribute it to being sort of that fair launch idea. And I think that's what you're getting at, that more fair launch projects are going to see a lot more appetite or interest. And that's, an extension why, meme coins have also, seen such high interest in the market outside just speculation, because that really, you can argue whether they're fair launch or not, considering that people, can create them from nothing and then distribute them to whoever they want. End of the day, people will see them as more fair launch than a low, float, high valuation VC coin that was created and dumped onto the market. So that's one I'm definitely looking forward to next year. And hopefully when we get more regulations inside the US too, I think this behavior too should look a lot less appealing, and we get a lot more fair launch altcoin launches coming up.
Yeah, there's a good dashboard that we may link to below from ASXN, which had some good data on the airdrop for anyone interested. But yeah, really, I think important to just note sort of a shift in, I think, narrative that will come about because of this Hyperliquid airdrop, which from everything I've heard over the past year or so, the team behind it is actually quite technical and has a background in traditional finance in terms of high frequency trading and derivatives and whatnot. People have always, again, anecdotally, I'd never used it, but I've always heard that the product and the user experience itself is actually quite good quality. And now they're building their own layer one chain, which has a lot of apps apparently being built on top of it. So we'll see if they can sustain that momentum. But yeah, a few interesting strategies there I noted as well. Just not having the centralized exchange listings, which we've seen this year. A lot of big name projects have sort of launched with multiple centralized exchange listings from day one. Hyperliquid actually did zero. And I think that was a good strategy because it almost brought on a lot of users were forced to buy and sell the hype token on the Hyperliquid chain itself and actually use the product essentially. So I thought that was actually quite a novel approach that I'd seen. But yeah, keen to see how far Hyperliquid can go and what the future holds for it. And then segueing from hype, I suppose, to other hype, Nick, has been XRP this week. Let's see what we got here.
It's been the thing that's really defined the week, and to be honest, this latest rally for me, a lot of people wondering about these older coins and how they're going to compete in the market. I definitely was of the position that tough for XRP to really even get going amongst all this competition from the likes of Solana and Ethereum. But we just continue to see XRP rocket from high to high. Failed to make a high in 2021, and then did it make an all-time high recently in the last few days? I think it could have, as it went up, I think about 500%.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think it's about 40 cents or so. It's getting close. I think it's $3.20 US is its all-time high. So yeah, it's about six. It's at about 6-year highs at the moment, which actually takes you back to I think January 2018 was when famously CNBC had a segment where they did a tutorial of how to buy XRP on Poloniex. They had up on the TV and taught people how to buy XRP. That was like another talk about top signals.
Oh wow, yeah,
yeah. So that's the highest price it's been since then. And yeah, we may at this rate, who knows, see it go to all-time highs there. The ETF application with maybe one reason that people are throwing around for why price is that something you've seen?
Yeah, that's one of the fundamental reasons why it may, especially considering that I think US is entering a more favorable environment. Obviously, XRP has been around one of the longest, altcoins in the market. So you think anyone's going to get an ETF, it's probably XRP. I actually think that could actually be a negative, to be honest, because if that doesn't get any strong adoption to the ETF, then it'd probably actually be quite a negative for XRP to show the lack of interest. So I think that would be a huge judgment day on the actual appetite from even in institutional interest really in an XRP product, because if that fails and even down the line gets deregistered because it's got no activity on it, that would actually be pretty negative in a way for XRP. So there could be a double-edged sword in a way. Another big one here is Ripple stablecoin that's going to be rolled out possibly next month. So that's going to be a huge deal. Again, I still struggle to understand why people would want to use the Ripple stablecoin as opposed to USDC or the plethora of other stablecoins in the market that easily can move cross chain and have much more liquidity and DApps that can be leveraged with it. So that's one I still struggle to see it driving the price a lot. But at the end of the day, XRP has actually flipped Sol as well as USDT in market cap, sitting third now on the ranking. So back to where it's started to get to in 2017, which is a crazy thing to think about, really, because XRP now has the same market cap as BlackRock, which is really hilarious when we look at these huge cryptocurrencies and their market caps when we consider them to traditional financial players or even just other businesses at how big those market caps are. So huge one for XRP. I'm still not a believer in XRP. I still struggle to see how it's going to continue to justify that huge market cap, but happy to be proven wrong, especially if you actually have these financial services companies that Ripple has so long said they have partnerships with actually continue to build on XRP ledger. That's going to be the thing that justifies it all, and just waiting to hear more fundamentals, really, because a lot of it has been more hype than any practical fundamentals on network adoption, especially with people talking about the US possibly going to give capital tax breaks for crypto companies or crypto tokens that were built in the US. Stuff like that I'm seeing spread a lot online, but it's not substantiated in any way from what I've seen. I'm not sure if you've seen anything to that, Matt, but it seems all hype to me. Because at the end of the day, if you're a US company not in crypto, then you'd be pretty pissed off that crypto companies getting a capital gains discount or no tax on that, whereas you would have to be paying. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, and would only rile people up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd be shocked to see that come through when Trump is inaugurated. Even though, we haven't actually seen any news about him hinting at this tax break. But yeah, I'd be shocked if there is anything about total tax breaks for anyone to do with like having capital gains or no capital gains event with any cryptocurrency. Being quite surprised. So I'm actually not really surprised, I suppose, in a way, to see how much fuel that's been getting and circulated around. But yeah, I guess we'll know sooner or later if that's true or not. Just wrapping up the altcoin segment here, we also have BuilderNet being released here by Flashbots. So they've been working on this basically all throughout 2024. And Hasu here calling it an initial step in the journey to decentralized block building on Ethereum, which, as I think we've covered previously, is is really, really quite centralized, the market structure of that. And ultimately just trying to help Ethereum become more fair and more decentralized, essentially. So yeah, you can check out BuilderNet in the links if you wanted as well. Okay, in terms of next bit here, as we wrap up, in terms of what to look forward to, I think I've just got my eyes on two big macro events coming up. This Friday will be the jobs report. So the jobs report, as we've been covering recently in the US, is now the most important bit of macro data now that inflation has come down under control a bit more. So that will be coming out on Friday. So if it's a lot more than expected or a lot less than expected, that will definitely have implications on what the Fed does on December 18th, which is the other date I'm looking ahead to, where the Federal Reserve will have its next interest rate and policy meeting, where, from what I've understood, it's sort of a flip of the coin whether the Fed really cuts rates by 25 basis points or not. Previously, it was more or less a sure thing that they were going to cut rates, but now it's become a bit more of a coin toss. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But in terms of our underrated and overappreciated segment, one that I saw this week that didn't really get a lot of attention was that Farcaster is releasing their V2 of frames. So as people might remember, who's followed crypto a lot more closely, Warpcast, the social media platform built on Farcaster, they really caught fire earlier this year. In particular, one of the catalysts for that was the innovation and the release of frames, which was essentially just a feature to just ultimately just really bolster the user experience of interacting with cryptocurrency and blockchains within social media to keep it brief. They're actually working on a V2 that is looking like it'll be coming out in 2025. So you've also got the Solana Blinks, so blockchain links. They're also have come out this year and should keep improving throughout 2025. So yeah, a bit of an I think an over. People are sort of sleeping on this as being, I think, the next catalyst of growth potentially for crypto. But there was also a big interview I saw last week, Nick, that I see you've got in your one for this week.
Yeah, this one's a double edged because I think it's appreciated in the industry if you work in the industry, but underappreciated if you're kind of more of a casual observer of the cryptocurrency space. So Mark Andreessen, he went on Joe Rogan, who has one of the biggest podcasts in the world. And of course, Mark, he's founder at A16Z, one of the biggest, global, venture firms in the world. So he went on 3-hour talk about essentially how crypto was being treated by, the traditional financial world. He went on a long tangent, really just explaining how hard it has been for crypto founders to be banked in the US. And I was really surprised by Joe's, he was really shocked at just the level of debanking that was going on and the hostility to the industry from, the Biden administration in the last 4 years. Really shocked. And I think a lot of people would really be surprised to know that, people building crypto products in the US couldn't really do so. They couldn't even really get bank accounts or operate their crypto businesses. You have to do things like payroll. You got to have, sophisticated dollars, because you can't pay people just in crypto these days. You need that traditional financial backing, and that's what Choke Point 2.0 really did. It really took the ability for people to operate these businesses away and move them offshore. So this was huge. Recommend anyone really checking this out. There's a lot of good snippets out there on some of the best parts of the interview, but just surprised to see people's really shocked that hey, it was really difficult to operate a crypto business in the US. And that's why a lot of people are excited for 2025 and the years coming, that we're probably going to get an end to, the debanking of crypto businesses, and people who want to create businesses in the US can finally do so and create these products out in the open and, importantly, get a bank account. So yeah, shout out to that interview there.
Cool. Just a reminder before we wrap things up, we have our Crypto Investor Growth Summit happening this Thursday. So you can register at collectiveshift.io/summit. That's all for free. And yeah, looking forward to getting into a lot of panels and covering a lot of topics in a free online event happening on Thursday. But that is a wrap for this week. If you are looking for more insights on the crypto market and all things crypto, see our weekly Shift newsletter. providing free weekly market insights every Friday. Subscribe at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.